Hey, a precondition is something that must be true before a block of code runs. Seems pretty obvious. For example, so an example, that little half sheet that we just did, if you had a class that represented a fraction, you had a variable for the numerator, variable for the denominator, you could say there's a precondition that the denominator is not 0. In case you don't remember, denominator is the one on the bottom. And so what that means as a precondition, it means that if you're writing the block of code that follows that precondition, it means you can assume that it's met that condition. It doesn't mean you have to check for it. It means you can assume that it's going to be okay. So, so let's go for an example here. On the AP test, they might ask you to clarify a precondition. So, we're going to write a so I'm writing a method here. Return A divided by B equals C, and so let's just look at this code down here. This is just like a problem that's on the AP Classroom. So we don't know what the context is of this code, but we know there's this method called divider, and it receives 3 integers, int A, B, and C, and it returns a Boolean. It's going to return if A divided by C is equal, A divided by B is equal to C, it's going to return true or false. Now, for this code to successfully run, what would be a precondition? Owen?
To have A, B, and C declared, right?
Well, that is a given. So if you call this code, you're going to be sending 3 numbers. I mean, you're right, but we have to go farther forward than that. Ella? B cannot equal 0. Thank you. If you try to run this code, and if B equals 0, it crashes. Java will crash. The code will stop executing.
And why is that?
Because you can't divide by 0.
Oh, yes, I guess that makes sense.
More?
No, that's it.
Yeah. So the precondition for this would be int B not equal to 0. So you might be, you'll see this in a multiple choice problem, and it'll say, hey, given this method, which of the following would be a required precondition? And then you look at them and say, okay, do any of these things make any sense given the problem at hand? Let's do another one. We're going to have the precondition be blank, and now for the second problem, I'm saying I'm not even showing you the code, but I'll tell you what this thing is supposed to do. It's supposed to return true, returns true if there is at least one prime number between integers A and B. So what would be a logical precondition? Think about it for a second. Anyone?
A does not equal B.
A does not equal B. I think that's a good one. I mean, you could make it work if they were the same, but that's not a bad one. A not equal B. What else? I was thinking of something different, but so yeah, Ian. That's what I was thinking of. B greater than A. I mean, you could make it work where it didn't matter, but if we're thinking in a linear fashion. That's all I thought of. So I like the A not equal B. I was thinking of B greater than A. You could even say B greater than A plus 1, meaning there's at least one number in between them. But it really, you have some leeway there. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so then the last thing for today's notes.
There's another condition.
Yeah.
A must not be greater than B.
Or A less than B. Yeah. Yeah.
So is the precondition going right before the constructor then?
The precondition, so the question was, did the precondition go before the constructor? Here's the thing. You'll see code that has comments on top of it, right below, right before a constructor or a method or even the class. And so that's where the preconditions would be stated.
Okay.
I'll show you that in just a sec. One more little twist on that. A post condition, and I think there's probably a space between the word post and condition, is your to-do list as a programmer. It's what the block of code is supposed to do. But you get to assume whatever they say the precondition, like, hey, let's assume A and B are positive and B is greater than A and there's at least one number in between. Great, then you can write code that assumes all that. If they're telling you it's a precondition, you don't have to check it. You don't have to make sure it's okay. You just say, all right, I know they're going to give me two numbers and I know one's going to be bigger than the other, blah, blah, blah. And so then you can write your code and you're supposed to do whatever they say. The post condition for my second example was that you're going to return true or false. Return true if there's at least one prime number between the two given numbers. Otherwise, return false. Okay, so lastly for today, Java has a way to put this stuff into your code. And you don't have to learn it for the AP test, but I want you to see it. So I've opened a file. It's the actor.java file from AP Computer Science Grid World case study. It's no longer required as part of the course. It was back like a decade ago. And I'm glad it's not required because it's pretty complicated. But it has this world where there's these little bugs and plants and rocks and things on a grid and things move around. So in that sense, it was satisfying. On the other sense, it's pretty complicated. And I'm glad we're not having to do it. But if you look here, they've got this special kind of comment with 2 stars. That highlights that it's a Java doc comment. And this code here helps you. You can write this stuff, and again, we don't have to. I just wanted you to see it. This is where they would talk about preconditions. Or say what's going to happen in some code. So you can put comments next to your things. You don't have to do this double star comment thing and use these special variables and things. But I want you to see what happens if you do. So this is just this thing called actor.java. And then under, I got to find it, build, I think it's under file menu, generate documentation. Check this thing out. It runs through all this code. And then it actually literally makes a web page that describes this class and everything about it. So it's pretty powerful. If you work at a company and you're coding, you'd be required to put comments in that followed some framework that that company has specified. So there's all this information down here. It talks about constructors and methods. And in case you think I'm just faking it, we can go back into that code and let's go up here, right here, the actor. We're going to say this is Hayes, rocks. And then when we run build generate documentation, it's going to somewhere say Hayes rocks. Oh, and Hayes rocks is an identity with a color and direction. So anyway, you see, you just build this thing. You could build it on the fly. You could build it for a whole project and have this whole basically HTML help file that tells people how to use your code. So yes.
This is called a Java doc.
Java doc, JAVA. Java doc. Java doc. Comments demonstration. That's all I want.